This is Alex Mercer. If you're hearing my voice right now, you still have power or a battery, and that already puts you ahead of the storm. It's 9:47 p.m., and what was supposed to be a fast-moving system has stalled directly over the region. Winds are now exceeding forecast models. Rainfall rates are doubling by the minute. Roads are disappearing underwater faster than emergency crews can mark them closed. And tonight's broadcast is no longer about updates. It's about staying alive until morning. Sierra Lane.
I've been watching the messages come in, Alex. People aren't asking if it's bad anymore. They're asking how bad it's going to get. A mother from Cedar Ridge just wrote that the windows in her living room are bending inward. Another listener says their basement stairs are already underwater. There's a tone shift happening. Panic is giving way to something quieter. Fear mixed with focus. People are realizing this isn't background noise. This is the main event.
Alex Mercer. We're getting reports now from emergency dispatch. Response times are effectively frozen. If you're inside, you are on your own for the next several hours. One family, just outside the floodplain boundary, sent us a voice message earlier tonight. They didn't expect to be in danger. No evacuation order. No warning sirens. Just wind, then rain, then darkness. The father describes dragging mattresses into the hallway as the pressure in the house changed, like the air itself was pushing back. The mother admits she didn't pack the emergency kit last month because it felt dramatic. Their teenage son is holding a flashlight that's already dimming, counting the battery percentage out loud like it's a countdown clock. Old arguments surface in moments like this. Who ignored what? Who didn't listen? Who assumed tomorrow would be calmer than today? Sierra Lane.
What struck me about their message wasn't the fear. It was the way their voices kept checking on each other, even mid-argument. Are you okay? Keep slipping out between raised tones. That's what storms do. They strip away the illusion of time. Everything becomes immediate. You don't argue about next week when the roof is shaking tonight.
Alex Mercer. If you're sheltering in place, move to the most interior room of your home. Stay away from windows. If water is rising, move upward, but not into attics without an exit. Conserve phone batteries. Use text instead of calls. And if you have a radio, keep it on low volume. Information is oxygen right now. Sierra Lane.
We're hearing a different kind of story now, not about wind or water, but about people. Neighbors who barely nodded at each other yesterday are now crammed into the same living room, sharing candles and bottled water. And when the power goes out, silence gets loud. One listener says the thunder outside made it impossible to ignore the tension inside. Words came out that had been buried for years. Affairs confessed, resentments named. Apologies that had waited too long suddenly forced into the open.
Alex Mercer. Storms don't create truth, but they remove the places we hide it. When there's nowhere else to go, emotionally or physically, what's been pressing from inside finally breaks through. And that can be as dangerous as the weather itself. We're interrupting ourselves. New alert just came in. The river gauge downtown has exceeded historical records. This is now a once-in-a-century event happening in real time. If you are still on the road, abandon the vehicle if water reaches the door. Cars float faster than you think. Sierra Lane.
Earlier tonight, a single lightning strike hit a substation near the industrial district. We're hearing conflicting reports. Some say it triggered a transformer fire. Others say the fire caused the blackout. What matters is what happened next. Emergency lights failed. Phone networks stuttered. People ran towards smoke without knowing why. Strangers pulled strangers out of flooded intersections. Old grudges vanished in the glow of flames.
Alex Mercer. Moments like that divide life cleanly into before and after. A listener just said, "I'll never hear thunder the same way again." That's how trauma brands memory. Not with images, but with sounds. Sierra Lane.
Alex, there's something haunting about storms like this. They don't target. They don't negotiate. They don't care who prepared and who didn't. They only reveal who we protect, who we forgive, who we cling to when the walls shake.
Alex Mercer. And when morning comes, because it will come, even if it feels impossible right now, people will rebuild houses faster than they rebuild trust. Some relationships won't survive the night. Others will be forged permanently in it. If you're listening with others, stay together. If you're alone, keep this frequency on. You are not as isolated as it feels. Breathe slow. Stay put unless water forces you out. And remember, panic wastes energy you may need later. Sierra Lane.
To everyone writing this out in the dark, we see you, we hear you. And your stories matter, even if the power doesn't come back tonight.
Alex Mercer. This is Alex Mercer, and this has been a live emergency broadcast. We'll stay on the air as long as we can. Not because we have all the answers, but because silence right now would be the most dangerous thing of all. It's just past 11:30 p.m. now, and we need to mark this moment clearly for the record, because this is when inconvenience officially turned into emergency. The grid failure that began as scattered outages has now cascaded. Multiple substations are offline. Not damaged, offline. Engineers are reporting system lockouts they can't override remotely. That means this isn't a flip it back on situation. This is darkness with no timestamp. And the most dangerous thing about that kind of darkness isn't what you can't see. It's what you start to imagine filling it. We're getting reports from downtown of elevators stalled between floors with people inside. Emergency call buttons blinking uselessly. Hospitals are on generator power, which sounds reassuring until you remember generators are temporary by design. Streets that relied on traffic signals are now intersections of hesitation and collision. And in apartments across the city, people are standing in doorways, staring at light switches they've flipped a dozen times already. Not because they think it will work, but because routine is the last thing panic lets go of.
The messages coming in have changed tone again, Alex. Earlier it was fear mixed with disbelief. Now it's something sharper. People are writing things like, "No one is telling us anything." And why is there no official update? The absence of information is doing its own kind of damage. Rumors are filling the gap. Talk of transformer explosions that didn't happen, dam failures that aren't real, evacuation orders that were never issued. And once fear starts traveling faster than truth, panic doesn't need a reason anymore. It sustains itself.
That's how civilization frays. Not with screaming, not with violence, but with uncertainty. When systems fail quietly, people don't know what rules still apply. Is it safe to go outside? Is help coming? Are you supposed to stay put? Or is staying put the mistake you'll regret later? Without answers, every decision feels like a gamble with invisible odds.
One listener just sent a voice note from a high-rise stairwell. They said people started knocking on doors they'd never spoken to before. Not to steal, not to threaten, just to confirm someone else was alive on the other side of the wall. That's how deep the fear of isolation goes. Darkness doesn't just take light, it takes certainty.
If you're listening right now and you still have power, use it wisely. Charge what you can. Fill containers with water. If you don't have power, conserve movement. Stay where you are unless there's an immediate threat, like rising water. Panic burns energy faster than any storm ever could. We need to talk about the bridge. Multiple calls have come in from drivers trapped mid-span as floodwaters rise beneath them. Traffic cameras went dark half an hour ago, but before they did, we saw it clearly. Rows of vehicles frozen in place, rain slashing sideways so hard it looked solid. Wind gusts rocking the railings, visibility down to a few feet. This is one of those situations where infrastructure turns from protection into a trap. Sierra Lane.
One caller described the sound, Alex. Not just rain, but metal. The bridge itself groaning. Cars rocking slightly as gusts hit them broadside. People stepping out of vehicles at first, trying to assess, then realizing the water below was moving too fast to judge depth. And suddenly, everyone's decision affects everyone else. If one person panics and runs, others follow. If one stays, doubt spreads. The bridge becomes its own ecosystem of fear.
And here's the brutal truth. There is no universally right choice in that moment. Staying in a vehicle risks rising water and impact from debris. Leaving it risks being knocked over, swept away, or struck by another panicked driver. These are the decisions storms force on people without training, without warning, and without time. Courage and fear look almost identical from the outside.
A man just messaged us, said he handed his jacket to a stranger's child because the kid was shaking so hard he thought she'd pass out. That detail matters. Because even here, even now, in the middle of chaos, people are still choosing each other. The storm doesn't erase humanity, it tests it under pressure.
If you are trapped on a bridge right now and you're hearing this, stay low, stay visible, and do not underestimate the water. Moving water as shallow as 6 inches can knock you off your feet. If authorities issue instructions, follow them immediately. And if no instructions come, move deliberately, not emotionally.
The bridge is a metaphor tonight, Alex. Suspended between where we were and whatever comes next. No clear way forward, no easy way back, just weather, time, and the choices we make while waiting.
Alex Mercer. And to everyone listening from somewhere safer, remember this feeling. Because storms pass, but memory doesn't. How we act in the dark becomes the story we carry into the light. It's after midnight now, and the storm has settled into a rhythm that's almost worse than the chaos earlier. Thunder no longer surprises, it announces itself, slow and heavy, rolling in like something remembered rather than something new. And that's what we're hearing from listeners tonight. The sound isn't just noise anymore. It's a key. Each strike unlocks a memory people didn't know was still waiting. A woman from Ohio wrote that every thunderclap pulls her back to the night her father didn't come home. A veteran listening from his basement says the low rumble feels identical to distant artillery, and he's counting breaths the way he was trained to years ago. Storms do that. They don't just shake buildings, they shake timelines.
I've been sitting with these messages, Alex, and they're deeply personal. People aren't asking for forecasts anymore. They're confessing. One listener said the rain on the roof sounds like the night their marriage ended, when words piled up faster than apologies. Another said lightning flashes remind her of ambulance lights from a night she survived but never really left behind. The storm has stripped away distractions. No screens, no background noise. Just weather and memory sharing the same space. And when that happens, emotions don't ask permission to surface.
This is the part of survival no checklist prepares you for. You can board windows. You can store water. But when the past comes back uninvited, you have to ride it out without shelter. The mind looks for patterns, for meaning. It connects the violence outside to the pain inside and decides they belong together. That's not weakness. That's being human under pressure.
We want to say this clearly, to anyone listening and feeling overwhelmed by memories tonight. You're not failing because you're emotional. You're responding to stress the way the brain has always responded. If you can, ground yourself. Touch something solid. Name where you are. Breathe through the thunder instead of waiting for it to pass. One listener said she started speaking out loud, describing the room, the furniture, the people with her, just to remind herself that the memory wasn't happening again. It helped. Not perfectly, but enough.
And sometimes survival is just staying present long enough for the storm, inside and out, to move on. As the night stretches on, something else is becoming clear. The city people thought they knew no longer exists in recognizable form. Streets have become rivers. Familiar landmarks are hidden behind darkness and debris. We're hearing from people who stepped outside thinking they were 1 block from safety, only to realize orientation itself had failed them. When power goes out and signs disappear, memory becomes unreliable. What you think is north may not be. What you remember as solid ground may now be water.
One message came in from a college student who said she walked for 40 minutes and ended up back where she started, soaked, exhausted, and terrified. She said the city felt like it was folding in on itself, every turn wrong, every decision heavier than the last. Another listener described shelter hopping, moving from doorway to parking garage to stairwell, never staying long because each place felt temporary, exposed, unfinished. Safety tonight isn't a destination, it's a pause.
And exhaustion changes everything. When people are tired, fear gets louder. Hope gets quieter. Decisions slow down or rush forward with equal danger. If you're moving right now, the most important thing you can do is stop when you find relative safety. Dry if you can. Sit if you can. Movement without purpose drains the body faster than cold or hunger.
But even in this maze, kindness keeps appearing, brief, almost fragile, but real. Someone holding a door open in the rain, a stranger sharing a flashlight, a family pulling someone inside without questions. These moments don't fix the storm, but they cut through the fear like small lights. One listener wrote, "I thought hope would feel big. It doesn't. It feels like someone handing you a towel and not asking your name."
That's what hope looks like when everything unnecessary is stripped away. It's not optimism. It's permission to keep going. If you find shelter tonight, remember it might not be permanent, and that's okay. Temporary safety is still safety. Survival happens in stages, not victories.
And if you're still searching, keep listening. Use sound to orient yourself. Sirens, voices, wind direction. They tell stories when sight can't. You are not weak for needing help. You are alive because you're looking for it.
There's a moment in every severe storm when it stops feeling random. When the thunder stacks on itself, when lightning flashes so often the dark barely has time to return, when the wind howls like something with intent. We're in that moment now. Listeners are describing the sky as furious, like it's shouting, accusing, demanding attention. And maybe that's projection. Or maybe it's what happens when human emotion finally finds something loud enough to match it.
People are angry tonight, Alex, not just scared. Angry at the weather, at themselves, at choices made years ago that feel suddenly relevant again. One listener said the storm sounds like all the arguments they never finished having. Another said the lightning feels like punctuation, every flash ending a sentence they've been avoiding. The storm is giving form to feelings people didn't know where to put.
Emotion mirrors environment under stress. When the world feels hostile, the mind searches for internal conflicts to explain it. Grief surfaces. Regret sharpens. Fear looks for justification. This doesn't mean the storm caused these feelings. It means it gave them space.
And that reckoning doesn't end when the rain slows. By morning, debris will be visible. Damage will be counted. But the emotional aftermath lingers longer. People will remember how they felt tonight, who they reached for, who they avoided, what they realized when there was nothing left to distract them. Storms leave imprints.
If you're feeling raw right now, understand this. Emotional exposure is not collapse. It's processing under pressure. Give yourself grace. Give others patience. Words spoken tonight may carry more weight than intended.
The sky will calm, it always does. But what it stirred doesn't disappear automatically. Talk tomorrow, write things down, check on people you shared shelter with. Healing begins when the noise fades enough to listen.
We'll stay with you as long as the signal holds. The storm may sound angry, but you are not alone beneath it. The house we're hearing about tonight could be any house. The kind you've driven past 1,000 times without noticing. Tonight, it's sealed shut by wind and rain, candles burning low, shadows stretching longer with every thunderclap. There's nowhere to go, nothing to scroll. No excuse left to avoid the conversations that have been waiting years for this moment. When the power went out, the silence didn't arrive all at once. It crept in, filling the gaps between words that were never spoken. And now, with the storm battering the walls like a relentless witness, The truth is finally speaking louder than the weather.
Listeners are telling us that confinement changes everything. One woman wrote that her family sat in the living room at first, pretending it was temporary, laughing nervously, making jokes about candles and board games. But when the third hour passed and the storm only grew angrier, the jokes dried up. Someone finally said what had been sitting in the room for years. Then someone else answered. She said it felt like the thunder gave permission, as if every crash outside said, "You can't hide anymore." Confessions came out unevenly. Old betrayals, resentments, regrets that had been disguised as politeness for so long they felt permanent.
Stress strips away performance. Under sustained pressure, the brain stops conserving energy for social masks. Survival mode doesn't care about politeness. It cares about truth, because truth is efficient. And when people are trapped together, that efficiency can feel brutal. The storm outside becomes background noise, reduced to a steady percussion, while the real damage happens in words.
But it's not all destruction. Some listeners describe something unexpected. Relief. Painful, yes, but honest. A man said he finally admitted he was scared all the time, and instead of judgment, he got silence. Then understanding. Another said hearing the truth hurt less than carrying the suspicion had. Not every revelation heals. Some fracture relationships beyond repair. But pretending costs energy people don't have tonight.
If you're in that situation right now, remember this. You don't have to resolve everything in one night. Storms create urgency, but healing doesn't run on weather schedules. If emotions are boiling over, it's okay to pause. Drink water. Sit in a different room. The goal tonight isn't closure. It's survival, emotional included. It's after 2 in the morning when the knock happens. Sharp. Intentional. Not carried by the wind. Not debris. A sound hum that cuts cleanly through the storm and freezes everyone inside. We've received dozens of messages describing this exact moment. The hesitation, the fear calculus, the sudden awareness of vulnerability. Inside is shelter. Outside is chaos. And standing between them is a decision that can't be undone.
One listener said the knock was so unexpected they didn't breathe for several seconds afterward. Another said their dog started barking, then stopped, as if even it was unsure what to do. The storm isolates people, and isolation amplifies risk. You don't know who's out there. You don't know why they're knocking now. You don't know what they'll bring in with them. Need, danger, desperation.
From a survival standpoint, this is one of the most complex decisions a person can face. Human instinct pushes us to help. Fear tells us to protect what little safety we've carved out. Neither instinct is wrong. Both are trying to keep you alive in different ways.
Some listeners opened the door. They describe soaked clothing, shaking hands, eyes wide with fear. A story spills out quickly, car stranded, phone dead, nowhere else to go. Others chose not to answer. They listened to the footsteps fade into the storm and carried the weight of that choice in silence. One person wrote, "I don't know if I did the right thing. I only know I'm still alive." That uncertainty lingers.
If you're faced with that moment tonight, slow it down if you can. Speak through the door. Ask questions. Look for consistency in the story. Trust patterns more than please. And remember, choosing caution is not cruelty. Choosing compassion is not weakness. Storms force imperfect decisions. You judge them later with information you didn't have at the time.
And sometimes the stranger becomes something else entirely, a reminder that the world hasn't ended even when it feels like it's shrinking to the size of one house. Shared shelter doesn't guarantee safety, but it can create something rare in moments like this. Connection under pressure.
Not everyone has walls tonight. Some are moving through the storm alone, with nothing but soaked clothes, failing batteries, and instinct. We're hearing from people who lost track of time hours ago. Streets blur together. Landmarks vanish. The storm erases identity the way it erases visibility. You're no longer a job title, a role, a name. You're a body moving forward because stopping feels worse.
One listener said the silence between thunderclaps was the hardest part. No voices, no reassurance, just breath and rain. Another described talking out loud to themselves, not out of fear, but to stay real. If I hear my voice, they said, I know I'm still here. Loneliness during a storm isn't quiet. It's loud inside your head.
Physically, isolation increases risk. Hypothermia, disorientation, injury without aid. Emotionally, it strips away the buffers that usually soften fear. But it also reveals something else. Capacity. People discover they can keep moving long after they thought they'd stop. They find strength not as confidence, but as refusal to quit.
Listeners describe moments of clarity breaking through the fear. A realization that they've survived worse than they remember. That panic comes in waves and passes if you don't let it steer. One person wrote, I was terrified, but I was still choosing each step. That mattered. It does matter. Choice, even tiny ones, is resilience.
If you're alone right now, focus on the immediate. Warmth, shelter, direction. Don't think about morning. Think about the next 10 minutes. Storms feel endless when you measure them against hope. They feel manageable when you measure them against action.
And remember, being alone doesn't mean being forgotten. Your story is part of this night, even if no one sees you yet. Keep moving toward safety. Keep listening if you can. The storm may be loud, but it is not infinite.
We're still here with you. Through every confession, every knock, every solitary step through the rain. This night is heavy, but it's still moving forward. Stay with us. By morning, the storm no longer sounds angry. It sounds exhausted. That's how people realize it's over. Not with relief, but with a hollow quiet that feels unfamiliar in their own bodies. When daylight finally pushes through the clouds, it reveals what the night took with it. Houses folded in on themselves like paper. Storefronts gutted and filled with mud, glass, and water that smells like everything it touched on the way in. Cars stacked where streets used to be, and people standing still, not because they don't know what to do, but because they don't yet know how to grieve something this large.
Listeners who stepped outside at first light keep using the same word, unrecognizable. One woman said she walked 3 blocks and couldn't tell where she was anymore. Landmarks were gone, familiar corners erased. Another wrote that she kept expecting someone to say it was a movie set, that the real neighborhood was still intact somewhere else. But it wasn't. What the storm destroyed wasn't just property, it was continuity. The feeling that yesterday connects cleanly to today.
Psychologically, that break is devastating. Humans rely on permanence more than we realize. The belief that if we leave something and come back, it will still be there. When that belief is shattered, the mind scrambles to rebuild meaning from debris. Survivors often report numbness first. Tears come later, sometimes days later, when the body realizes it's safe enough to feel again.
We're hearing from families who carried out only what they could hold. Documents, a photo album, a child wrapped in a blanket. Everything else stayed behind. One listener said, I didn't choose what to save. I just grabbed what my hands found. That sentence says everything about disaster. Choice disappears. Instinct takes over. And afterward, people replay those moments endlessly, asking why they didn't grab something else. Someone else. One more thing.
If you're walking through ruins right now, here's something important. Shock masks injury. Drink water even if you're not thirsty. Sit down even if you think you're fine. And take photos, not for social media, but for memory. Trauma distorts recall. Documentation helps later, when systems ask you to prove what you lost while you're still trying to understand it yourself. And yet, amid wreckage, something else is happening. We're receiving messages about connection forming under pressure, not the gentle kind, the urgent kind, the kind that doesn't ask permission. When the world narrows to survival, emotional distance collapses with it.
One listener said the storm trapped them overnight with someone they hadn't spoken to honestly in years. They thought they were finished, thought the feelings were gone. But fear changes priorities. When the walls shook and the roof groaned, the question wasn't, do I still love you? It was, who do I want next to me if this ends badly? And the answer came faster than expected.
Neurologically, high-stress situations amplify emotional bonding. The brain releases chemicals meant to reinforce connection under threat. That's why people fall in love during crises, or rediscover it. It's not weakness, it's wiring. Survival has always been a shared activity.
Messages keep coming in about hands held in the dark, words said without rehearsal, kisses that felt like confessions. Some of these connections will last, some won't survive the calm that follows. But tonight they mattered. One person wrote, "Yun, I didn't know if we'd make it through the night, so I stopped pretending." That honesty can't be undone, and maybe it shouldn't be.
If you're feeling something intense right now, let it exist without demanding it become permanent. Crisis clarifies truth, but it doesn't always define the future. Hold space for what you felt without rushing to label it. Survival moments are real, even if they don't last forever. As the rain continues upstream, another threat unfolds quietly, and then all at once. Rivers don't announce their intentions. They just rise. What was calm yesterday becomes a boundary, then a warning, then an order. Water doesn't negotiate. It takes the lowest ground first, then everything else.
Listeners near the river described the moment they realized it wasn't stopping. Backyards vanished, basements filled in minutes. Streets turned into currents strong enough to knock adults off their feet. One message came in from a man who said he stood on his porch watching the water climb the steps and thought, "I waited too long." That realization arrives heavy and unforgiving.
Flood dynamics are brutal because they compress time. You don't get hours to decide. You get minutes. And every minute costs more than the last. The water carries debris, chemicals, sharp edges you can't see. Once it enters a structure, it undermines it from the inside. Staying becomes more dangerous than leaving, but leaving means risking the unknown.
We're hearing stories of people helping strangers into boats, onto rooftops, through windows. Acts of courage without names attached. But also stories of separation. Families losing sight of each other in rising water. Pets slipping from arms. Cars stalling and being abandoned as the current takes control. The river doesn't care what you meant to do. It only responds to gravity.
If you're near floodwater, do not enter moving water on foot if you can avoid it. 6 inches can knock you down. A foot can carry you away. Higher ground is safety, even if it's temporary. And if evacuation is still possible, go earlier than feels necessary. Flood regret is always about waiting.
What's haunting is how many listeners describe the river as alive tonight. Not in a poetic sense, but in the way it demands attention, respect, sacrifice. One person said, It felt like it was choosing what to take. That's how disaster feels when it's intimate, when it touches your street, your door, your life.
By the time the water slows, the choices have already been made. Survival stories begin. Loss stories, too. And people will spend years rebuilding structures, but longer rebuilding trust in stability.
If you're listening from somewhere dry, somewhere intact, hold on to that gratitude gently. And if you're listening from the aftermath, mud on your shoes, fear still in your chest, know this. The night took a lot, but it didn't take everything. You're still here, and that matters more than anything left behind.
We'll stay with you as long as the signal holds. Through the ruins, through the quiet, through whatever comes next. This storm has passed, but the stories are just beginning. Stay with us. The rain has a way of removing the walls people build inside themselves. Not the physical ones. We've talked enough tonight about doors braced and windows bowed, but the quieter walls, the ones made of routine and avoidance and all the things we tell ourselves we'll say later. When the rain doesn't stop, when the sound becomes constant and unavoidable, silence starts to feel heavier than noise. That's when people speak. Not because they planned to, because holding it in suddenly feels more dangerous than letting it out.
We've been hearing it in the calls, Alex. Voices shaking not from cold, but from release. A man from the outskirts of town said he apologized to his brother over a crackling phone line after 8 years of not speaking. He said the words came out wrong, rushed, imperfect, but they came out. Another listener said she finally admitted to her daughter that she'd been afraid her whole life and pretended to be strong so no one would notice. The storm didn't force the truth. It made space for it. Thunder fills the pauses so people don't have to.
There's a psychological reason for this. Prolonged stress narrows the future. When tomorrow feels uncertain, the brain prioritizes resolution. Unfinished emotional business becomes a liability. Confession, apology, explanation, these aren't weaknesses. They're attempts at balance. The mind wants to leave fewer loose ends in case there isn't time later.
One message that keeps replaying in my head came from someone sheltering in a hallway with 3 generations of family. They said the rain was so loud it felt like privacy, like no one else could hear them even though everyone was right there. Under that cover, they told the truth about things they'd buried for decades. Old resentment, old love, old regret. They said afterward no one knew what to do, so they just sat together listening to the rain, knowing something had changed permanently.
Words spoken under fear don't evaporate when the fear passes. They settle. They reshape relationships. If you spoke tonight, really spoke, be gentle with yourself tomorrow. Honesty during crisis is raw, unfiltered. It may need translation later when the noise fades. And if you're holding something you didn't say, that's okay too. Survival includes choosing silence when speaking would cost more than it gives.
But for many, the storm became permission. Permission to stop pretending. Permission to admit love, or guilt, or longing. One listener wrote, "I didn't want my last words to be routine. That sentence says everything. When the rain sounds endless, people stop waiting for the right moment. They take the one they have."
Somewhere beyond the flooded roads and fallen lines, a train moves through the storm with its lights cutting a narrow tunnel of visibility through the rain. It was never meant to be dramatic. It was supposed to be a routine run. But storms don't care about schedules, and tonight, every mile feels like a gamble.
We've received fragmented updates from passengers, texts sent when signals flicker, voice notes recorded in case they can't send anything later. They describe water pooling along the tracks, signals blinking yellow when they should be green, the train slowing not because it wants to, but because it has to. Inside, the air feels tight. People glance at windows like they might show answers.
Rail systems are resilient, but not invincible. Flooding compromises ballast, undermines track stability, interferes with electrical signaling. Engineers make calculations in real time. Speed versus safety, delay versus exposure. Every decision carries risk. Stopping means surrendering momentum. Continuing means trusting infrastructure already under strain.
Passengers feel that tension even if they don't know the mechanics. One person said they can hear the effort in the train itself, the hum changing pitch, the occasional jolt that makes everyone look up at once. Conversations start between strangers, not small talk, the kind that skips introductions. People ask where you're going, who's waiting, what you're afraid of losing if the train doesn't make it.
In confined spaces under threat, time compresses. Hours feel like minutes. Decisions feel final even when they're not. Some passengers consider getting off at flooded platforms, weighing the risk of staying versus stepping into the unknown. Others grip armrests and decide that movement, any movement, is better than stopping.
One message came in that simply said, "We're still moving." No punctuation, no explanation, just relief wrapped in motion. Another said, "If we stop, I don't know what happens next." That's the truth of nights like this. Forward motion becomes hope, even when the destination is uncertain.
If you're traveling during a storm like this, remember, stay informed, but don't feed panic. Follow crew instructions. Keep your essentials close, and know that fear is not a failure. It's a signal that you're paying attention. Machines can carry us through danger, but it's human calm that keeps chaos from spreading inside them.
For some, the train will arrive. For others, it may stop short of home. Either way, this journey will be remembered not for where it ended, but for how close it came to not ending at all. People will recall the sound of rain on metal, the way strangers shared snacks and stories, the way time felt borrowed.
Storms don't just test structures. They test timing, what we say, where we go. Whether we keep moving when stopping feels safer, or stop when moving feels reckless. Tonight, people spoke because silence felt too heavy, and people rode forward because stillness felt like surrender.
If you're listening from somewhere in motion or somewhere held still by weather, know this. The storm may shape the night, but it doesn't own your voice or your choices. Those still belong to you.
We'll remain here, steady as we can be, while the rain decides what it's finished with. This is Night Signal. Stay with us. There's a different quality to fear when you hear it through a child's breathing. Not loud, not dramatic, just the way it changes rhythm when thunder cracks too close, when the house shudders, when adults go quiet for half a second too long. Tonight, the storm feels endless to them, bigger than anything they've known. To a child, this isn't weather. It's a living thing pressing against the walls, testing every corner of their world at once.
We're hearing it in the messages, Alex. Parents whispering so their kids won't hear the tremor in their voices. One listener said her son asked if the house was mad at them. Another said his daughter lined up her stuffed animals against the window like guards, whispering instructions to them as the wind screamed outside. Children don't have the language for disaster, so they translate it into imagination. And sometimes that imagination is braver than we expect.
Psychologically, children process danger through observation. They don't listen to reassurances as much as they watch behavior. A steady voice matters less than steady hands. When adults pace, children internalize urgency. When adults sit, breathe, and explain simply, children learn regulation, even while afraid. Tonight, many kids are learning lessons they shouldn't have to learn yet. That adults don't always have answers, that safety isn't guaranteed, that fear can exist alongside love.
One message came in from a family sheltering in a bathroom. The power was gone, the radio barely audible. The parents were exhausted. But the child started telling jokes, bad ones, on purpose. The listener said, "I realized my kid was trying to protect us." That's what storms do. They rearrange roles. Children step forward emotionally. Adults crack, then recover. Courage becomes something passed back and forth in small moments.
These nights leave marks, not always visible ones. Children will remember the sound of rain on the roof, the way candlelight moved on the walls, the way adults held each other when they thought no one was watching. Those memories don't always become trauma. Sometimes they become resilience, the understanding that fear can be survived, that closeness matters, that even when the world feels enormous and hostile, connection still fits inside small spaces.
If you're with children tonight, narrate calm. Explain what's happening in simple, honest terms. Give them something to do. Hold a flashlight. Count seconds between thunder. Tell a story. Participation turns fear into purpose. And remember, they're watching how you handle this. Long after the storm passes, they'll remember not just the danger, but how it felt to be together inside it.
When friends are trapped together by weather, the storm doesn't just shake buildings. It shakes agreements that were never spoken aloud. Who takes charge? Who freezes? Who puts themselves first? Friendship, like shelter, is tested under pressure.
We've heard stories all night of groups who thought they knew each other until the rain wouldn't stop. One listener described being stuck in an apartment with 3 friends when the power went out. At first they joked. Then supplies ran low. Someone wanted to leave. Someone refused. Voices rose. Old resentments surfaced. Not because of the storm, but because the storm removed distractions that kept those feelings buried.
Stress reveals priorities. In survival scenarios, the brain shifts towards self-preservation. That doesn't mean people stop caring, but it does mean choices become sharper, less polite. When resources feel scarce, generosity competes with fear. Friendship under pressure requires communication, flexibility, and sometimes forgiveness in real time.
One message came from two lifelong friends sheltering in a carport after flooding forced them out of their homes. One wanted to split up to check on family. The other begged them to stay together. They argued in the rain until exhaustion won. Eventually they sat back to back sharing a jacket. The listener said, "Well, we didn't resolve anything, but we survived the night." Sometimes that's enough.
And sometimes it isn't. We've also heard from people who realize tonight that proximity doesn't equal loyalty. That when fear hits, some bonds bend and others break. That realization hurts, but it's honest. Storms clarify relationships the way calm never can.
But we've also heard the opposite, friends rediscovering why they trusted each other in the first place. One group coordinated supplies without speaking much at all. Another rotated sleep shifts instinctively. Another held hands when thunder hit hardest, no explanations needed. Pressure didn't destroy those friendships, it forged them.
If you're sheltering with friends tonight, name stress before it becomes conflict. Agree on priorities. Share decisions. And remember, fear speaks louder than intention. Respond to behavior with curiosity, not accusation. You may all be reacting differently to the same threat, and that difference doesn't mean betrayal.
Storms don't create character, they expose it. And sometimes they give friendships the chance to evolve into something stronger, more honest, or in some cases finally complete.
Whether you're listening with children huddled close or friends sharing space under strain, know this: survival isn't just about enduring the storm outside. It's about navigating the emotional weather inside the walls, between people, within yourself.
The rain will pass, the wind will quiet, but what you learn about each other tonight, about fear, courage, loyalty, that stays.
Stay with us. The night isn't finished yet. There's a moment when a storm stops being personal and becomes communal. When it's no longer just your roof, your street, your fear, but an entire town holding its breath at the same time. That's where we are now. You can feel it in the silence between thunderclaps, in the way radios across miles all hum with the same uncertainty. Emergency alerts were supposed to guide people. Tonight, they failed. And in that absence, something else rushed in to fill the gap.
Rumors. They move faster than floodwater. We're hearing them everywhere. Whispers of dam failures that aren't confirmed, evacuation orders that never came, stories of neighborhoods already gone. People are making decisions based not on facts, but on fragments. Some are gathering in schools and churches, dragging mattresses and bags through rain-soaked streets. Others are locking doors, choosing isolation over crowds. And some are leaving town altogether, headlights cutting through sheets of rain, not knowing if the roads ahead still exist.
This is where leadership matters most, and where its absence becomes painfully visible. Town officials unreachable, emergency lines overloaded, coordination breaking down not because people don't care, but because systems built for normal crises are overwhelmed by scale. In these moments, authority doesn't come from titles, it comes from action, from the person with a flashlight directing traffic at a flooded intersection, from the nurse turning a community center into an impromptu triage, from neighbors knocking on doors to check who hasn't answered yet.
We've received messages naming names, not to shame, but to remember. The librarian who opened the doors and let families sleep between the shelves. The mechanic who pulled 3 people out of a stalled truck. The councilman who vanished when the power went out. Storms don't just test infrastructure, they test character, and towns remember. Long after the water recedes, people remember who showed up when it mattered.
Sociologically, disasters strip away the illusion of uniformity. They reveal fault lines, economic, racial, cultural, that were always there. Who lives in flood zones? Who has transportation? Who trusts authorities and who never did? But they also reveal something else, the instinct to connect. Even in fear, humans seek witnesses, someone else to say, I see this too, I'm here with you.
One listener described standing in a gymnasium packed with strangers, listening to the roof creak, and realizing the arguments that divided them yesterday didn't matter tonight. Politics fell silent. Old grudges paused. Survival flattened the hierarchy. Everyone became just a body trying to make it to morning. That kind of unity doesn't last forever, but it's real while it exists.
The storm is still raging outside, but something inside the town has already shifted. A reckoning has begun. By dawn, the physical damage will be measured in numbers. Homes lost, streets flooded, power lines down. But the social damage and the social strength will be harder to quantify. Towns don't just rebuild buildings, they rebuild trust, or fail to.
And now, there's a change in the sound of the rain. If you're listening closely, you might hear it too. Not silence, but spacing. The thunder stretches out, the wind loses some of its edge. This is the hour when exhaustion hits hardest, when adrenaline drains away and leaves only weight.
This is the most dangerous emotional phase of any disaster. After the peak threat, when bodies are depleted and minds are raw. Despair settles in quietly. People look at the damage and feel the scale of it all at once. The questions start to surface. How do we fix this? Where do we even begin? What if we can't?
We're hearing that doubt everywhere, messages saying, I don't know if I have the strength to start over. Everything I worked for is gone. Loss doesn't wait for daylight to be acknowledged. It presses in as soon as survival no longer demands full attention. Grief arrives early and uninvited.
But there's something else that happens in these hours before dawn. Neurologically, humans are wired to respond to light as a signal of possibility. Even before the sun rises, the body senses change. Cortisol drops. Breathing slows. Hope doesn't arrive fully formed, but it stirs.
One listener sent a message a few minutes ago. The rain stopped long enough for me to hear birds, just one sound, but it reminded me that something survived. That's how it starts. Not with optimism, but with evidence. Small, undeniable signs that the world didn't end, even if parts of it did.
Rebirth after disaster is never clean. It doesn't erase loss. It grows around it. Communities rebuild with scars intact. People carry memories they didn't ask for, but they also carry knowledge that they endured, that they adapted, that they were not alone in the worst hours.
If you're listening now, still awake, still holding it together out of necessity, be gentle with yourself when the light comes. Strength doesn't mean feeling okay. It means continuing anyway. Rest when you can, drink water, check on someone else when you're able. These small acts are how recovery begins.
Dawn will arrive unevenly. Some will greet it with relief, others with anger, others with silence. All of it is valid. The storm may be ending, but its impact will echo for years, in stories told, in choices made, in how this town remembers itself.
You made it through the night. That matters. Whatever comes next will be built on that single fact. You are still here.
We'll stay with you as long as the signal holds, as long as there are stories to share, questions to ask, and voices reaching out across the quiet after the storm.
This is where the night gives way to morning. Not a promise, but a beginning.
And so, as the first fragile light of morning begins to seep into streets still slick with rain, we find ourselves holding on to what remains. Not everything is intact. Not every home, every life, every dream has survived unscathed. But you, listeners, neighbors, strangers connected by the same tempest, have made it through the night. That, in itself, is something extraordinary. Tonight, we were reminded that storms are never just weather. They are tests, mirrors, and crucibles. They strip away certainty, exposing the raw, unpolished truth of who we are, what we fear, and what we cherish.
We've heard from families huddled in attics, from strangers sharing blankets on flooded streets, from children who learned courage before dawn. We've heard whispers of loss, confessions of old guilt, acts of heroism small and vast, and quiet moments of grace that no camera, no news headline, no emergency alert could ever capture. Tonight, each story became part of a larger story, a tapestry of endurance, fragility, and humanity. Even as roofs sagged, rivers rose, and power vanished, hearts found ways to beat in rhythm with hope, however faint.
And now, as the rain fades into memory and the storm recedes into legend, the silence that follows is almost deafening. It's in that silence that we find the echoes of our resilience, the voices of those who reached out to help, those who clung to each other, those who chose connection over fear. They are the quiet proof that even when the world seems consumed by chaos, life insists on continuing. Life insists on insisting.
For those listening tonight, alone or together, we leave you with this. Remember the night. Remember the storm. Not because it broke you, but because it revealed the depth of your endurance, the capacity of your heart, the courage you didn't know you had. Cherish the moments of clarity, of laughter, of shared breath amidst thunder. These will sustain you in the days to come.
There are no easy endings. There is only continuation. The roads ahead will be muddy. The nights may feel long, but the dawn is real, and every step into it, however hesitant, is a step forward.
So breathe. Sit with what you've survived. Hold your loved ones a little tighter. Extend a hand to someone who needs it. And when the wind whispers again through empty streets, remember, it is not just a storm. It is a test, yes, but it is also a reminder that even in the darkest night, humanity endures.
From here, the broadcast fades, but the voices, the courage, the shared breath of a town, of a people, of a night spent together in fear and hope, that does not fade. That lives on, and it carries us forward, always forward.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for surviving. And above all, thank you for being here with us through the storm.